There we go. All right, this one ain't gonna hold it. And I don't know what to do about that. Hello. Child, I am in a technology apocalypse right now. Okay. How you doing? Welcome to TCI Sterile Processing Class 4. Hello. I'm going to try to loop the TikToky people in today, but it's not looking good for them right now. The way my phone is acting, it's not looking good for them right now. Hi, Chrisette. Hi, Sabu. Welcome in, welcome in. Shuffle things around a little bit and then we're going to get started. So we are covering Chapter 7 and Chapter 8 today. Chapter 7 being over decontamination and point of use, preparation, and transport. And then Chapter 8 being over cleaning and decontamination. So first we're going to learn how the instruments get packaged once they're done using them, whether that's on the floors in the patient's room or whether that's in the operating room, whether that's in the OBGYN office, wherever they're coming from. First, we need to figure out how do we prepare them to be transported within the facility, and then we get to cleaning. All right, so last week, or our last session, which was last week this time, we did a chapter review of 1 through 6. So hopefully that helps you guys solidify that information. She jumping like, where we going? Nowhere, girl. I'm sorry. We locked in for the next 4 hours, truthfully. Because as soon as I'm done teaching y'all, I have to hop into class. Sorry, you guys. I got my cords all mixed up back here. All right. Chapter 7. Sabu, Chrisette, did either one of you guys get a chance to do the reading for Chapter 7 or 8? No judgment if you didn't. I just want to know if you did. I'm going to let that charge just a little bit more. And then we're going to go. A little bit? Okay. So a little bit of Chapter 7. All right. So I'm going to, as usual, I'm giving a high-level overview of the chapter. But if you have questions from your reading, do not hesitate to ask. Yay! You got your books today. I love that. I'm excited about that. Wonderful. So you got quite a little bit of reading to do. So take your time. Don't feel like you need to rush through it because remember, all of the lives are on the live section of the Candray Institute's YouTube page. So as you read, you're able to go back and look at those videos and play catch up. Okay, so don't stress yourself. You're doing this on your own time, so that's not going anywhere. All right. I wish y'all could see this little one down here that wants to be petted. She is like, please, you have been gone all day. And now you're finna ignore me again. I'm sorry. Okay, so chapter 7 goes over decontamination at the point of use. So you guys are going to hear me say point of use, or POU over and over and over again, just like you hear me say HAI, hospital-acquired infection, over and over and over again. And that's because point of use is one of those spaces in that life cycle of a surgical instrument, right? So once we finish cleaning and sterilizing and decontaminating, it goes into sterile storage, and then it gets used at the point of use, which again could be a procedure room on the floors. It could be the operating room. It could be an operating room in the OBGYN, like maybe they're doing C-sections upstairs or hysterectomies. It could be coming from the emergency room when they're doing different lacerations and stitches, depending on what kind of kits you provide for them. So, and even scopes, colonoscopes and whatnot. Those are usually done away from the operating room. So wherever those instruments are being used, at some point they have to be prepared to be transported. You can't just take it out the body, right, and then put it on a tray and walk it down to the SPD. There are going to be some steps in place that take place at the point of use, okay? And a lot of times that work will be done by the healthcare professionals that are performing those procedures, right? So it might not be a sterile processing technician that gets it ready to transport. It more likely will be a tech or a nurse, a scope tech, someone else that's at the point of use where that instrument is being used at. All right. So a couple key terms and concepts that I want you guys to keep in mind. Decontamination. You're going to hear me say that a lot for the next hour. The process of removing or reducing contamination by infectious agents and in organic or inorganic material. So what does all the big words mean? We've gone over this quite a few times already. Decontamination is your method of removing whatever gross soil or whatever gross bioburden is on that instrument, whether it's organic material, meaning blood, plasma, tissue, or inorganic material. Maybe there's some packaging or some type of paste that they've used in the procedure, right? So whatever it is, it has to come off. And decontamination is the process of that removal. And then the second one is point of use processing. So point of use cleaning, you guys are going to hear me say. And that's the cleaning and preparing of surgical instruments immediately after use to prevent biofilm formation and instrument damage. Biofilm, we're going to talk about that. I'm going to read that definition out loud to you. But we've talked about it a little bit in that once we have a layer of whatever, let's say we have blood on our surgical instrument, that blood and whatever pathogens, bacteria, viruses are in it are going to multiply. So their job is to make more of themselves. And they're going to do that on top of your instrument. And one of the ways that they help themselves is by creating a protective layer around them so that they can continue to build up and build up and build up on that instrumentation. So that is your biofilm. And that's what you guys are combating. And really with biofilm, it's a war against time and then the cleaning, right? So we want to essentially clean that instrument as quickly as possible from the time that it's used to the time that it gets down to the decontam room. The longer we let it sit out, the longer it has to build up layers of biofilm. And if we let it go for too long, it may mean that we need to do more procedures manually in the decontamination room in order to render that instrument clean. So you can kind of think about it. I always described it to my executives upstairs as when you cook eggs. You guys ever cook eggs in your kitchen before? When you cook eggs, if you leave the pan or the bowl and you let it sit out and you let it dry and you go back to clean it, it's a lot harder to clean it than if you clean it immediately after you use it at the point of use. Reason being, it hasn't had time to dry up. It hasn't had time to build up layers of resistance through biofilm. So the faster, the better. All right. So point of use preparation responsibilities, those are going to fall on the surgical or the patient care representative at the point of use. I just talked about that a little bit, right? So you guys aren't there. They are. They are the ones that have to remove that first layer of gross biosoil. And they're going to do that by wiping the instrument down. They may have cause to rinse the instruments off. There may be certain products that they have in their department that they use to help render those things clean. So they have to do that. They have to get all the visible blood, tissue, body fluids, and just wipe it down. That's going to make it safer to transport it. I mean, it's the concept of if I'm carrying a piece of bloody meat in my hand, if I just put it in my hand and I walk down the hallway, I'm dripping everything I'm doing. I'm just making a mess as I go. Versus if I wipe this thing down, get it cleaned up so where it's not dripping anything more, and I walk down the hall, that's still not a safe way to transport, but that's safer than what I was doing before. Now, let's say I wipe it down and then I put it into a closed container that's completely sealed and I walk it down the hallway. Now I'm doing that in the safest way possible. So that's what your point of use cleaning is dictating for you, okay? So at the point of use, it's asking that those practitioners, whether they're surgical staff or patient care staff, they need to wipe that stuff down, and then they need to keep those instruments moist so they prevent the growth of biofilm. They may do that with different foam products. They may do that with there's some bag products, or they may just do that by bagging it up and getting it to you quickly. But the point is not to let it dry. They also need to separate and handle sharps. So let's say at the bedside, they had to land someone and there's a blade that's in that surgical kit. They are responsible for removing that sharp and putting it into a sharps container. At no point should they be delivering sharps down to the sterile processing department. That's highly dangerous for you guys. As you can imagine, if you were to open up a pack of instruments and not know that there was a scalpel in there or not know that there was a suture needle in there, you could very easily poke and cut yourself, and now you could potentially be infected with a patient's with that previous patient's disease. So they need to remove those sharps, any type of trocars. They need to make sure they dispose of them safely. And then they also are responsible for rinsing lumens. So again, I don't have a really good, I don't have a surgical instrument to show you guys, but if you do a search for cannulated instruments, what you will notice is that they always have a, what we call a cannula, which is a hole in them that we thread things through. So there's a lot of surgical instruments that are made like that, like suctions, right? So if you've ever been to the dentist and they put the little tube in your mouth and suction that up, that's a cannula. That's something with a lumen in it. So at the point of use, if they've done all that squeegeeing, we would like for them to rinse it through and leave that bioburden at the point of use. Now, is this a clean instrument? No, but much safer to handle, much safer to transport. They also need to dispose of any single-use items. So single-use items are anything that when you open it up, that package tells you only use it once, you don't reuse it again. So that may be things like gauze or maybe BP cuffs. It might be little trinkets that attach to the different surgical instruments. If those things have a symbol on them that says no reprocessing, they must be disposed of at the point of use. If for some strange reason they make it down to the operator or to the decontam room, never you fret. You guys would be highly trained on how to recognize them, and you would have ways to dispose of them properly. Okay. Let me see if there's anything else in there that I want you to be aware of. So let me read this definition of biofilm before we move forward. So your book describes biofilm as a collection of microorganisms that attach to surfaces and each other to form a colony. The colony produces a protective gel that is very difficult to penetrate with detergents and disinfectants, right? So the longer we let it create that gel protection layer around all those germs, the harder it is for us to clean. It's not to say that it's impossible, because we can get it clean, but it's going to take you more time. It might take you more product as well. And depending on the instrument, like if it's a flexible scope, it may require additional steps in your reprocessing. So, because like I know some of the vendors, if it's over an hour between the point of use and decontamination, there are additional cleaning steps that will be outlined for you in your instruction for use or your IFU. Any questions about anything so far? All right. Last thing I want to say about that before we get into transport is we talked a little bit about prions so far. Okay, no, good. Just let me know. Otherwise, I'm assuming y'all all right down there. We talked a little bit about prions being resistant bugs, and there's a particular disease that you guys will see in your book and will probably show up on your test, which is the Creutzfeldt-Jakob disease, or CJD. That's one of those prions where if your patient is suspected of having that condition, you would need to notify your infection prevention nurse, and you would notify your infection control nurse, usually the same person. And there's going to be a hospital policy in place that gives you the cleaning steps for that instrument. It will not be the same way that you clean instruments normally, because that prion is so resistant. So just like with the biofilm, where it's going to cause us more time, cause us more chemicals, prions have even a greater level of steps that you're going to need to take to clean it. And because it's so difficult to clean, your infection control has to be with you and a partner in that process. Sabu has a question, says, will we need to know about turnover and turnaround? You may need to know the basic concept of turnover and turnaround, but I highly doubt that that's going to be a major concept on your test. Now, you guys will need to know that for being on the floor, but I promise you, you'll get baptized in turnover and turnaround real quick on the floor. So for those of you that aren't familiar with what Sabu is talking about, turnover and turnaround are two terms that we use to let SPD techs know that they need to quickly reprocess surgical instruments. So I'm going to give you an example of, let's say that today at Alessandra's hospital, we have 3 total knees that we're doing in a row, back to back. But I only have 2 sets for those cases. So that means case number 3 has no surgical instruments available for them. So what do I have to do? That means that when case 1 comes out, I have to turn over or turn around the instrumentation from case 1 and get it reprocessed while case 2 is going on, so that by the time case 2 is done and case 3 starts, I have instrumentation available for them. There will be several times in a surgical case day that you turn over or turn around instruments for the sake that we can never have an equal amount of surgical instruments available for the number of procedures that we do. Now, that being said, it is incumbent on your management team to try to do their best to match it, especially if it's procedures that you're doing consistently. If every day we have 3 total knees, then why don't I have 4 kits, right? But turnover and turnaround is something that will absolutely show up for you in the field. But like I said, I would be aware of the concept for the test, but I highly doubt that that's going to be anything key for you. Okay, y'all, I'm going to try to get the TikTok folks in here. We're going to see if I can pull it off. We'll see. I got to change the things. And depending on your position as a sterile processing tech, you may be the one that helps facilitate that turnover process. So you might be like a lead tech or a supervisor, manager, a point person that is communicating with the OR to let them know that you're looking at the schedule and you see that they're going to need, set A for case 3. So it's something that you, like I said, through working in the department, you will quickly become familiar with how that process goes. All right, we got them in there. Okay, so now that we've talked about getting those instruments prepared to transport, let's talk about transporting them. Okay, so transporting contaminated items. Transport is going to go from that point of use, and if the instrumentation is in a department outside of the surgical department, more than likely they're going to have something that's called a soil utility room. So I don't know if y'all work in the hospital or if you've been in the hospital, you ever noticed there's like utility closets and things like that. Every floor has multiple ones that say soiled. And inside that soil utility room, they put their dirty procedure instruments. And then usually either somebody will come and transport them down to the SPD, or the SPD department will come and pick them up. So they may be transported to a soil utility and then picked up and transported to a decontam, or they may go straight from the procedure room straight to the decontam room. It just depends on where it's coming from and how your hospital procedure is set up. If it's coming from the OR, same process. They may have their instruments in what we call case carts. So case carts are this big metal box. That's the case cart. And inside of it is multiple surgical kits that were used on the procedure, right? So these have already been cleaned and prepared to transport, wiped down and all that good stuff. And then they pack them up into the case cart, and they will either bring this cart into a soil utility room to get transported to decontam, or they'll transport it straight to decontam. If you're a lucky ducky, you have a department that has an OR where you and your SPD department are either on the same floor or connected by elevators, in which this would be put onto an elevator and delivered to you or brought to you across the same floor. If you're not a lucky ducky, then you might be doing a little bit walking. If you're a really fancy ducky, you might be working in a department that has robots that picks your case card up and brings it to wherever it needs to go. Okay. So to transport, it always has to be in a closed container. Your governing bodies, right? Those agencies, the FDA, the CDC, DOT, remember we talked about all them making different rules. Your agencies, your ANSIs, your AMIs are all going to dictate that those instruments have to go into some type of closed container, whether it's a closed and sealed bag or a closed and sealed box or a closed and sealed case cart. It has to go inside and be closed, okay? You're going to use, you can use things like biohazard bags or rigid containers, but they must be closed and sealed. They must be labeled with that biohazard symbol on it. All right, so it's got to have that, whether you put it on there with a sticker or it's already on the box, or your case cart might have a thing where it slides back and forth and one side says clean and one side says dirty, but it must be labeled, okay? That is something that you will get cited for if you're in the middle of a survey and they see you transporting something and it's dirty and it doesn't say dirty, or they see you transporting the case cart and it's clean but it doesn't say clean. You just know your manager is going to get called to that boardroom, okay? They're going to get called to that boardroom. All right, so some special considerations with this. You may have to pre-treat your instruments at the point of use. So I talked about keeping things moist. There are products that are like gels or sprays where you may need to go into your soil utility room, spray those instruments down, and then transport them. When we call those enzymatic sprays or enzymatic gels, you guys are going to learn about enzymatics in the next chapter. So I'm not going to belabor that. But you may need to put them on there, and or your practitioner that was at point of use may also be responsible for that. And then we have what we call delayed processing risk. So that's where I was saying if there's too much time between, I'm on chapter 7, love. And if you want to follow along, I would highly suggest to go over to the YouTube, but you don't have to. Because I'll have my oh my God, guys. I didn't give you the notes. I was about to say I might have my notes up on YouTube. Y'all don't have the notes. One moment, please. See? This is what I'm talking about. Come running up in here straight after work. Let me get y'all the notes. Unless y'all just love listening to me talk. Without it, it's your world. You're only on chapter 3 and you're doing self-study. Okay. You are right where a lot of my folks are. Somebody in the class today just got their books yesterday. So I was telling them earlier, don't feel like you're behind. All of the classes are over on the YouTube. If you go to the link in my page and you click on the live section, you will see all of the episodes, Lord, y'all, all the classes. So you can go back through there at your leisure. And then if you have questions, just join the next live and ask me questions because I don't mind going back at all. All right, let me attach that. Yay! What's going on with this? All right. And I mean running my mouth and y'all ain't got the notes. Save as PDF. Y'all don't ever hesitate to ask me for them too, because I'm reading them. So I definitely have them for you. I know somebody told me they do better with them on the screen, so that's why I was like, wait, is this that? Okay, let me get that up here for y'all. Is it counteractive if I'm going to online school and also working with you? No, you're just doing extra, to be honest. But no, you shouldn't be getting any contradictory information. And if you do, let me know. But it should just help you more. You have to press send if you want to receive it. All right. I think. There we go. Good, because that's what I was expecting. Because I'm really, yeah, that should just help you. All right, here we go. I got them up here. Let me put them on present. Downloads. Here we go. Okay. Back to the action. All right, there you go. Sim, I can't afford to pay to go in class. So you're doing 2 online programs? I hear you. Quite frankly, I think you're doing it the best way. I do feel like anytime you can go and be hands-on in the class is a good thing. But as far as their processing is concerned, once you get your certificate, they're going to train you in that department. They have to. There is no class, there is no school that can really prepare you to work inside the department because there's just so much instrumentation you guys have to learn and memorize and places that you have to learn and go. So really the whole point of all these classes is just to give you key basic concepts so that when they're talking to you, they're not talking gibberish. They're not going, oh, go to decontam. You're like, what's a decontam? They're going to say, oh, go to decontam, and you're going to know that that's the room where they clean the instruments at. You're going to know some basic procedures on cleaning instruments, but you're not going to be, left alone, if you will. All right. So I was talking about delayed reprocessing. And delayed reprocessing, I see you sincerely, one sec. Delayed reprocessing is that concept I was talking about where you really need to clean those instruments within a certain time frame of them being used. Otherwise, it's considered delayed, and we need to add on extra cleaning steps. Delayed processing risk are your dried blood and protein deposits. So the longer we let it go, the riskier it is because things are drying. And also instrument corrosion. So instruments being damaged, your blood, all these different bodily fluids, they have salt, they have different, the surgeons using salines, different things in the surgical procedure. And then we leave those things on the instruments long periods of time. They can rust, they can pit. So again, we want to just get to it as quickly as possible. And then sincerely asked, are the class notes on my website? No, not yet. They are forthcoming. I owe you guys all of these chapter notes up until this point. I'm just trying to figure out what the best way is to get them out to you, but that is on my to-do list, and I have not forgotten about them. All right. Let me see if there's anything else for chapter 7. We talked about transporting in a safe container. PPE. So I hope that it goes without saying at this point, but you should be wearing PPE when you're in the soil utility room. You should have on your gloves. You shouldn't be picking instruments up barehanded, right? Because these are instruments that have been used. So you want to make sure that you put on whatever is appropriate for you in that space. There are some soil utility rooms that will have decontamination sinks and stuff upstairs for you or wherever that is in the department. So there may be, mask, glove, gowns, the whole full shebang. Or it may be just like a closet where they put the thing on the table and you come and pick it up. But again, you will want to do that wearing gloves. And then off-site processing or off-site reprocessing. We've talked about this a little bit. This is when your instruments are being cleaned at a facility outside of yours, right? So this is when we were talking about the Department of Transportation having rules and regulations about how we transport on the road. That's because sometimes these reprocessing activities are being taken place somewhere else. So we would have to consult with our DOT rules for our state and make sure that we're following procedure when we're taking instruments out and we're putting them on the road. I think that's pretty much it for a point of use. Any questions on that before I move into cleaning and decontamination on chapter 8? And reminder, just because I know there's people that are just coming into the class, people just getting their books, I highly recommend as a study tip to make flashcards for all the keywords that you see in your chapters. So if it comes in that little, you'll see at the end of your chapters, there should be central service terms. It probably says sterile processing terms for y'all with the new book. And then you'll see keywords in highlighted boxes, right? So those are things that I would highly recommend you make flashcards for that you can take with you. Just keep them in your purse, your backpack, or whatever, and study them on your downtime. If you got 5 minutes to scroll on TikTok, you got 5 minutes to review your flashcards. I promise you, nothing will prepare you better for the test than knowing your vocabulary. Because even if you don't know the answer to the question, the vocabulary is going to give you clues if you didn't understand the concept of the question, okay? I drill onto you to do these things. All right, chapter 8, cleaning and decontamination. So the key objectives of chapter 8 is for you guys to be able to identify cleaning and identify the challenges of cleaning. We're going to talk about the role of common cleaning tools. We're going to talk about mechanical washing versus manual washing. And we're going to list the steps of the cleaning process. So some key concepts about this overall chapter is there's a difference, and y'all have heard me say this already, between cleaning and decontamination. So cleaning is the removal of visible and non-visible contaminants using water, detergent, and mechanical action. So scrub-a-dub-a-dub, okay? Decontamination is the use of physical or chemical means to remove or kill microorganisms. So that may be, I get the instrument, it has a little bit of blood on it, I clean it by using the detergent and some manual action, and then I decontaminate it by putting it into some detergent, some enzymatic detergent, and further remove microorganisms from that instrumentation. And I also want to highlight here that is the third step of that would be disinfection, where I take something like an alcohol or a bleach or a glutaraldehyde and I soak my instrument until everything on it is dead. Okay? All right. So, and I know I've said this already, but of course we want to remember we cannot sterilize anything that has not been previously cleaned. So cleaning will always be the first step. If your instrument goes out into the OR or to a procedure room and it gets opened up and it doesn't get used and it comes back to the SPD, it still goes straight through the cleaning process before we take it to processing and before we take it to sterilization. So you could pretty much think of it as if they open that package, when it comes back to you, it starts with cleaning. Okay? Here's some examples of those laparoscopic instruments you guys have heard me talk quite a bit about. So those are going to be those metal tubes. These are the inserts that are going to go down those cannulas and into the body. Okay, so they're blown up in this picture, but we're talking about a 1/2 inch or smaller instrument heads with long metal tubes on them. All right, so the decontamination area is a place where you guys are going to clean your surgical instruments. It should be stocked with all your cleaning tools. It should have all your cleaning detergents in it. It should have PPE in there for you. And that is all dictated by OSHA. So your hospital is obligated through that bloodborne pathogen standard to have all those things available to you. If they don't, I would highly suggest that you not work there. But I know that a lot of people work in some crazy environments, so I'm not gonna get on it too much. The decontamination area is sectioned off away from your processing and your sterilization area. There's also going to be rules about your temperature and your humidity, your air exchanges, right? Because you guys are going to be in full PPE. So that room cannot be too hot. You guys are going to be spraying. You're going to be scrubbing. So that room has to have air exchanges. You want to have an environment that doesn't support the growth of microorganisms. Your decontamination room is restricted access, meaning that sterile processing professionals should be the only people in there, or hospital personnel that have been that are cleared to come into that room. You shouldn't be letting the general public into that room. You really should be keeping the traffic in that room low, and there will be signs to let people know that PPE is required and that it's not supposed to be, just a free-for-all. This is not a hangout spot. Your decontamination room should also have an emergency eye wash station because, again, you guys are working with bodily fluids. You also are working with detergents and chemicals. In case you have a splash in your eye, an eye wash station needs to be there. And your eye wash station is another place where you guys are going to have documentation that you're responsible for, because somebody, either the technicians in the room or the managers in the department or facilities, someone will be responsible for checking that eye wash station on a regular basis to make sure that it works properly. Because of course, we do not want to find out that the eye wash station is broke because Alessandra has splashed detergent in her eye. Right? So we're checking that routinely and we're documenting that. And that's another legal document that you all will be responsible for in your department. Okay, you're going to be dealing with sharps, right? In case somebody didn't bring sharps out of your room or out of your case cart. You might also have those disposable single-use instruments that somebody forgot to throw away. So there's going to be containers in your room for you to dispose of those things. And they give a definition in here of biohazardous waste. And that's the same as what I'm saying, bioburden. And that's waste containing infectious agents that present a risk or a potential risk to human health, either directly through infections or indirectly through the environment. So now we kind of got a background on what should be in that room, where that room should be, who should be in that room. Let's talk about the workflow of what happens when we bring instruments into the decontam. So first, we receive them. Your decontamination room may even have a separate space that is called receiving that just has like some PPE and places for them to bring things in. And then another door where you go into the decontamination room. Okay, but receiving soil instruments must be handled as biohazard material. Like I said before, if they open up an instrument and they bring it to the decontam and they say to you, this hasn't been used, does that mean that you put it in your hand with no gloves on? No. You handle everything in decontam like it has HIV on it because you don't know. Okay? All you know is that it's dirty. So your staff must wear PPE. That's that personal protective equipment. And I know you guys know what that is because we've gone over it so much already. But if you feel like you want to drop it in the chat, do so. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, so your PPE is going to be your gown. And notice on here I've added fluid resistant gown. Not just a gown, but a fluid resistant gown. Now, why would you want to have a gown on in the decontam that is resistant to liquids? I feel like that should be an easy one. But why would you want to have a gown on in the decontam that's resistant to liquids? Then you also want to have a face shield or a mask that has eye protection. So you're going to have a mask over your mouth and nose so you're not breathing in anything, any particulates spraying up in the air. You're also going to have goggles on to protect your eyes from splashes. You're going to have heavy-duty gloves on. So these are not the thin gloves that you see on the nursing floors, those little nitrile gloves. No, you guys are going to have a thicker version of your glove. And that's to make sure that nothing is getting through onto your hands. You're also going to wear shoe covers so that you're not tracking any blood in and out of the department. Is my YouTube asleep? Where my YouTubies at? I didn't see nobody answer the question. Why would you want to have a fluid resistant gown in the decontam? Okay, so sorting and disassembling instruments. So now that the OR has brought down the instruments to you, you're going to receive them and you're going to first sort them out. You're going to, there's a lot of different, I could say a lot of different methods on how you want to sort, but some general things about sorting. You're going to remove the instrumentation that we consider delicate, viruses essentially, straight to the point. But I want to have a fluid resistant gown, because what if I splash water? Or what if I splash blood? I don't want those liquids seeping through onto my scrubs. So I need to make sure that that gown is more of that plastic version that's going to repel any type of liquid that comes my way. And I don't mean to be scary, but it happens. It's a part of the job. You're gonna have splashes of water. You're gonna pull something out of case cart that somebody didn't prep properly, and blood's gonna pour out the cart. It's not something that happens frequently, but it is something that does happen. So you gotta have that PPE on. All right, so we're gonna sort material by type and cleaning method. And what that means is some of your instruments are going to be delicate, like those scopes and cameras that cannot be dunked into the water. They have too many cavities, right? Some of those power drills, you're not going to be able to just put them in the sink or just put them in the washer. You'll have to hand clean them. You may have to wipe them down. So you want to separate those out first. And sometimes people will, set them to the side and clean them after or clean them before. That's really, neither here nor there at this point. But just knowing that not every single thing in the case cart is going to be cleaned the same way. Some of your instruments will be harder metals, so they'll go into your sink first for you to scrub and then take to your automated washers. So you just want to separate out by material. You also want to disassemble. So you want to disassemble any instruments that have multiple parts, right? So we talked about those lumens, those minimally invasive surgery instruments. They will come with 2 or 3 different components, or the scopes. They might come with a cap that goes on the end of the scope. The lumens might have the actual cannula and then the insert. So you will need to remove the insert from the cannula. So, or your drill, maybe they leave the batteries attached to your drill. You need to take that off. So whatever needs to come apart, you will be trained thoroughly on how to take those things apart and decontam. And then lastly, you want to remove any lumens or suction tips, any cannulas. You want to separate those. You don't want to remove them from the tray that they come in per se, but you want to make sure that you're taking your time to manually push brushes through those and rinse those and not just put them up onto the rack to go into the washer. All right. Pre-cleaning methods. Manual cleaning. Manual cleaning is required for delicate, complex, or heat-sensitive instruments. So that's what I just got done explaining. These things are going to use a neutral pH detergent and soft brushes. So think about it as, let's say you wanted to, you want to wipe down the cord on your hair dryer. Y'all know how it has that thick rubber plastic on it? You're going to wipe that down. If I was to take a metal brush to that and scrub it, I would damage that rubber exterior. So you're going to be using soft brushes for some of these more delicate items or items that are coated in a more rubbery material. Ultrasonic cleaning. So we haven't talked about this yet. When it comes to mechanical washing, there are 2 different machines that we use to mechanically clean instruments. One is called a washer disinfector, which is a larger machine. I don't know if they have a good picture of it in here. You guys might do better to just search them on Google or to look at what they have available for you in your book. But washer disinfectors, you can think of them as a large dishwasher machines, but never call it a dishwasher in sterile processing. They will be offended, okay? You can think of it like that, though. And then ultrasonics, think of them more how your deep freezer is set up. So ultrasonics, you will open up a lid like that, put your instruments into it. It's full of water, and it does a cavitation process. And cavitation is a high frequency sound wave that creates bubbles to remove fine particles. You guys may have seen like smaller versions of ultrasonics that clean jewelry, where you put it into the little machine and it has its own little detergents and water in it. And essentially it vibrates so fast that high frequency vibration creates little bubbles in the water. Those little bubbles burst off your bioburden, your soil. So it's a process that is more delicate. And so your titanium instruments, your eye instruments, they can handle that process. Versus if I were to put those same delicate things, like I wouldn't put a bunch of diamonds into a dishwasher and let them go all around and think that when I open up the dishwasher, it's going to be all, no cracks, nothing. So when it's something super delicate and it can handle being submerged in water, we use an ultrasonic. Washer disinfectors use a more high-powered pressure with the water. So it will have arms that the water gets pushed through. And you can think of it like your sprinkler systems. Y'all ever seen them long sprinklers that have all the water come up? So it's like that, but inside of that machine. And it pushes the water and knocks off the blood and bone and stuff by using that pressure. It also will, just like a dishwasher or a clothes washer, it'll fill up with water. It will fill up with detergent. It will start spraying those instruments just really strong. And then it will rinse them off. Then it will introduce a thermal drying. And then you will be able to get that instrumentation out of the washer. Right? So, a thermal disinfection. And then it will start to dry. And then you'll be able to remove those instruments. So when we talked about the difference between cleaning, decontamination, and disinfection, inside of the automated washer, your cleaning and washing takes place with your detergent. Your decontamination takes place when that impingement, that water is smacking the life out of those instruments and knocking all the stuff off. And then your disinfection happens when that machine heats up and does a thermal disinfection to kill the bugs that might be left behind. That's going to make it safe for you to handle it on the other side. So now before in decontam, you had to have on all this PPE. Once you get on the other side and processing and it's clean and it's coming out the washer, you can actually handle those instruments with your bare hands because they've been thermally disinfected. All right. Anything else up there? I talked about traffic control with restricted. People can't, not everybody can come into the department. You have to have restricted access, and that's traffic control. We're going to talk about this a little bit with your detergents, but your water and your decontamination sinks do have to hit certain temperatures in order to activate your detergents, depending on which ones you use. So that's something else that you'll want to keep in mind. I'm pretty sure it should pop up on your test somewhere. All right, so next up, we're talking about detergents and cleaning agents. So enzymatic cleaners is a type of detergent. They break down organic material. And we call them enzymatic because they're made up of enzymes that break down proteins, fats, and carbohydrates. Proteins, fats, and carbohydrates are what your blood and your bodily fluids are made of. So enzymatics are enzymes that will break down the bodily fluids of humans. You also have pH neutral detergents. So your enzymatics sometimes will be alkaline, sometimes will be, why am I blanking? Acidic. And certain instruments, because of what they're made out of, can't handle that nature. So they also have what they call pH neutral detergents. And those are preferred for stainless steel to prevent corrosion. So the same, concept. I wouldn't want to be dipping it in acid every day and thinking that it's not going to erode the exterior of my instrument. So I would be more inclined to use a pH neutral detergent. It really just depends on what that instrument is and what that IFU calls for you to use. Then we have alkaline detergents, and those are effective on heavy organic loads, but may require a neutralizing rinse. So that means that there may be a second product that you have to use to neutralize what was in that detergent and activated on your instrument. So cleaning techniques and considerations. Right before I get into that, let me talk real quick about cleaning tools. So the things that you need to clean, you will most often need some water. Almost all of your processes is going to start with water. Your water needs to be high quality. And that's something that comes in from the different organizations. I won't go too far into that right now. But your water does have to have certain quality to it. It has to hit certain pH levels. You can't use essentially dirty water, right, to clean something. So it does have some statutes to it. You also going to have a need for tools like brushes to push through lumens or to wipe instrument down. There might be different type of cleaning sponges that you need to use. So those type of materials will be provided for you by your sterile processing management. I don't know if y'all will be able to see that, but there's some different type of brushes. If you guys utilize going to that HealthMark website I talked about last week, they also have a lot of information about cleaning tools if you just want to peruse them. All right, so cleaning techniques and considerations. Brushing. Brushing is, you're going to use a to and fro motion, back and forth, to and fro, when you're using your toothbrush style brushes. When you're pushing in a brush through a lumen, you will not use a to and fro motion, in the perspective that you will push the brush all the way through the lumen. You will clean the end of the brush off. So now your hand is underwater with your glove on, right? You're cleaning it off, and then you bring that fro. You don't just put it in and start scrubbing in the middle of the instrument. So that's the difference between if you're going through a lumen or if you're using a toothbrush style brush. And it's recommended that you always clean under, this says always clean under running water, but essentially that's not quite accurate. So I need to correct that. You always want to use running water to rinse through your lumens, but most often in the decontam room, you're going to build a bath of a couple gallons, might be 5 gallons, 10 gallons of water and detergent. And you want to make sure that you're doing your brushing and scrubbing under the water surface. Now, why is that? The reason being, if you're brushing above water, you will be spraying water back and forth all over the place that comes off those little bristles. So you can think about it like your toothbrush. If I get my toothbrush wet and I take my thumb down it, it's going to flick water all over the place. So if I don't want that to happen, I need to do that underwater so that scrubbing motion isn't sending water up up into the air. And then rinsing, once we've done that mechanical brushing, we got all the blood and bioburden off. We want to rinse it. Here's some more examples of those brushes for you guys, which you should have in your book. So once you get it all cleaned off, you want to rinse it using deionized or reverse osmosis water to prevent residue from building up. Now, what is reverse osmosis water? Reverse osmosis water or deionized water is going to be water that you have in your facility that is taken through a filtration process. And then you're using that for what we call your final rinse. I don't care where you work. I don't care what place you go. If you clean a surgical instrument, the final rinse must be deionized water or reverse osmosis water. You cannot run it under the tap. You cannot do these things. Okay. Then we're going to inspect that instrument. We're going to check it, make sure we got the blood. If there was rust on it, we're using rust remover. If it's cracked, maybe we might put a note on it and let somebody know that there's some cracks or pitting or stiffness. If there's stiffness in the joints, there may be products in your decontam for you to put on there, just like a lubricant to get it to going again. Because these are instruments that we're continuously exposing to high temperatures and using over and over again. So you want to make sure that they work perfectly before you bring them back to your surgeon. And then lumens, I'm not going to go over this too much because I've pretty much said this 1,000 times already. But one thing in here I haven't said is that you want to make sure you want to use the appropriate size brush for your lumen. So what do I mean by that? I mean, if I have a 3 millimeter hole and I have a 2 millimeter brush, I have a problem. Because my 2 millimeter brush is not going to reach that final millimeter to touch the sides of that lumen. So nothing on the edges of this thing is getting clean. You must use the proper size, okay? If you want to get it clean. If you're trying to hurt somebody, then I guess you won't care about that as much. But if you want to get it clean. All right. Let me think how I want to go. We talked about ultrasonics and cavitation. One thing about the ultrasonics it has in here is make sure you do not overload the machines. Same thing for your automated washers. There will be an instruction for use for your washer. There will be instruction for use for your ultrasonic. It'll tell you if you can only put a certain weight in there, a certain number of trays in there. Don't overload it. If you overload it, it's not able to do its job properly. So you're essentially wasting your time and wasting products, okay? All right. Oh, these little small containers. Again, this is something that won't necessarily be on your test, but just so you guys are aware. I don't know if you can see the tiny basket. You may have these little tiny metal baskets included in your. I don't know if you can see that at all. Where is it, Lord? Here it is for you. Ta-da. So you might have these little tiny things included in your surgical sets to keep any type of little screws or nuts or bolts. It is imperative that you keep them with their set so that they're not lost. It can be a nightmare to have a surgical instrument that needs to be put together and you can't find the proper bolts and or screws for it because somebody was paying attention. Okay. All right. So now we're switching over into automated cleaning. All right. So we talked about that ultrasonic cleaner. We talked about the washer disinfector. One thing with this, it notes that it should reach a temperature of at least 180 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to be a temperature that's going to kill, that's going to actually provide that thermal disinfection for you. So like if you notice that your washer gets done and it prints out a ticket and it tells you that it only got up to 170 degrees, you need to call somebody because those instruments are not safe to handle. All right. Disinfection methods. I've already talked about thermal disinfection quite a bit. So that's going to be that moist heat that's happening inside that washer. Chemical disinfection, I've also talked about quite a bit. These are going to be your chemicals, your glutaraldehyde, peracetic acid, hydrogen peroxide, alcohol. Those might be things that you are going to soak your instrument in to do the disinfection portion. The most important thing about your disinfection is to remember that it must hit the proper contact time. So tonight, I want y'all to do this, and you can just I'll put a post on TikTok for you guys to come to the comments too. Go in your kitchen, find a bottle that you use to disinfect, turn it over, read the instructions for use. That's what's on the back of the bottle. It's going to tell you what type of bugs it kills. It's also going to tell you how long the surface has to be wet in order for that disinfectant to be effective. That is your contact time, okay? So I would love it if you guys can just go to the comments tonight and tell me what product it was and what the contact time is. All right, drying and storage. So now I've cleaned the instrument. I've disinfected the instrument. I decontaminated the instrument. Now I'm going to get it dry so it's not growing nothing new, and I'm going to store it. That's going to be happening on the opposite side of decontamination in the reprocessing room. And usually it's just the instruments in their metal containers. Excuse me. One thing I didn't go over in this chapter was automated endoscope reprocessing. I will save that to next week because it's pretty involved, and I want to make sure that you guys get that information. I keep saying next week like it's not going to be Wednesday. All right, I'm flipping through to see if there's anything else before I get into these little review questions. We talked about cleaning movements. Powered equipment. Let's talk about cleaning powered equipment real quick before we hop off today. So within decontam, within surgical procedures, we use things that we call power equipment. Just like y'all, you could think of it like drills that you use to screw into the house and all this fun stuff. That's a power equipment, a power drill. What makes it a powered drill is that it has a motor or a battery system inside of it, and it's covered with a casing. So depending on what it is, it may not be safe for you to submerge it in water. Some of them now you can, depending on how it's made, but your instructions for use will tell you that. You want to make sure that you are using precautions when you run across a powered drill. Now, some power drills are the type that are electronic, where you plug it in and it goes, right? Some of them are battery powered, where I connect the battery pack to it, just like a hand drill, and it goes. Some of them are what we call pneumatic powered, which is air being pushed through the hose that makes it go. So depending on which type it is, depending on what manufacturer it is, it may or may not be able to be submerged. If in doubt, don't submerge it. You can always take a damp rag, wipe it down with the detergent, get all the gross soil off, and then take a clean rag, one that doesn't have any detergent on it, and do your rinse water. If you don't know, do that. Okay, because it's better to not ruin that instrumentation than to go ahead and soak it, and now the thing don't work no more. Okay, I think that's everything I want to cover in that. So just in review, key terms that I'm fairly certain to show up on y'all test, but that I definitely want you to know from this chapter is biofilm, which is that hardened layer of bacteria and organic material that forms on your instruments when they're not cleaned properly or when the processing is delayed, when you've just waited entirely too long to clean. Point of use processing is the initial cleaning of instruments at the site of use. Cavitation was that process that the ultrasonic uses to form the bubbles in liquid by ultrasonic wave that's going to do deeper cleaning because it can get into spaces that my brushes and bristles can't go. Enzymatic cleaners are detergents that break down organic matter. pH neutral detergents are a cleaning agent that prevents corrosion on surgical instruments. Your washer decontaminator, which is an automatic system that cleans and thermally disinfects instruments, that dishwasher. And thermal disinfection, which is the use of high heat to kill microorganisms. Manual cleaning, the hand washing of delicate instruments or complex instruments using brushes and detergents. And I do want to say here, almost everything in your decontam room is going to get some form of manual cleaning, even if it's going to go into the automated washer. Because just like a dishwasher, you want to remove all the gross soil before you put it into the automated washer. Don't make the automated washer work harder than it needs to. Please. Honestly, your instruments should be relatively looking real clean before they go into that automated washer. Then we talked about deionized water, which is a purified water, a filtered water that is used for final rinsing to prevent mineral deposits. And that's going to be a rinse at the sink, whether it's manual cleaning, your final rinse is deionized, or inside of the automated washer where the final rinse is deionized. And lastly, we talked about glutaraldehyde, which is going to come up again for you guys. This is a high-level disinfectant used for heat-sensitive instruments. So it's a chemical that we pour into a container. We put the instrument in it to soak, and over time, it disinfects. Okay. So I know we are just over time, and I got to head into my other class, but I just wanted to remind you guys of that little assignment. Okay. Do I have anything else on here for y'all? Oh, I'll save that. I'll save that for the review. So I'm going to post a clip from this class on the TikTok tonight. I want you to. This is not a hard assignment. Go to your cleaning shelf, whether it's your kitchen, your bathroom, grab a bottle, whatever you use, Ajax, bleach, whatever it is. Flip that bottle over and comment to me, what is the contact time? How long does that surface have to be wet in order for it to be effective in killing the bugs that you want dead on your surfaces? All right. I thank you guys so much for joining me for class 4. So see, Wednesday when we meet back at 4:45, we'll be going over chapters 9 and 10. If y'all have any questions for me in the meantime, y'all can find me on TikTok. You can send me a DM. You can drop a comment, or you can send me an email at candrayinstitute@gmail.com, and I will pop that up on the screen before I go in case anybody still needs it. Y'all have a beautiful evening, and I'll see you Wednesday. There we go. All right, Tickies. All right, Sharona. I will see you on Wednesday. Thank you so much for being on the TikTok side and liking the live, because TikTok loves that in the algorithm. It makes it so that I don't have to do the little puzzle every 5 minutes. So I appreciate you. And I'll see you on Wednesday. Bye, guys. possible, Cassette. Y'all have a good one.